traumatic death and suicide. Souls who incarnate into physical state come with very little plan of action. This means your destiny has not already been mapped out for you simply to follow like a puppet or pawn. Nor is your fate set in stone to balance some karmic debt or spiritual lesson. Lessons of life are not a prerequisite for some ascension process. Are such things as car accidents an orchestrated divine plot for one or more souls to depart? With minuscule exception, the answer must be no. Many other species, including some species on Earth, have the ability to leave their physical state at will, whenever they are done using it. There is no need for traumatic or violent transitions. It is so only for humans, because they are careless, irrational and spiritually disconnected. There are people who fail to realize that the spirit world has little influence on the day-to-day manifestations within the physical world. This is to say, the spirit world tends to leave the physical stuff to the physical beings within it, and interfere very little. It is actually very difficult for beings in the spirit world to work with energy at the vibration of physical state, simply because it takes a tremendous amount of energy focus and control to manipulate physical circumstance. This is why many choose to simply incarnate, as it is easier, in some respects. Within the physical state there exists imperfections. Accidents are going to happen due to these imperfections. If you hold a ball and drop it, it is going to fall. This is not some divine will of God intervening in the destiny of the ball, it is simply the mechanics of physical state. If a human being falls asleep at the wheel and kills another driver, this is not divine will, it is human fallibility. So too if they react in such a way as to drive off a cliff, crash into another car, or simply lose control of the vehicle. Sometimes it is easier and more palatable of heart to point the finger to some unseen force or twisted fantasy of fate. Some so-called spiritual individuals will claim there are no such things as accidents, yet this airy-fairy claim lacks the wisdom of a greater understanding that the physical state of life is not so perfect, orchestrated and organized as you make it out to be. It is a state of experimentation and continuous spontaneous creativity. This is why humans suffer so, not for some divine lesson, but to reveal anything and everything is permitted to be created. Imperfections create circumstances, both as a result from human action and of environmental influences. Just as such things as diseases, learning disabilities and genetic mutations are all results of physical state events, which have nothing whatsoever to do with any spiritual application. I'm fully aware, within my own role, within the awareness that I have, that an increase of spiritualist thinkers assume in blind faith that the spirit world has this great overpowering influence over every tiny little event in physical state. I'm sorry to inform you, this is not the case, as you will find out for yourself. This is why it is of the utmost importance for humanity to take responsibility for their own lives, their own planet and their own future. Now if one is also to bring into the equation the emotional repercussions of a soul, who is claimed to transition via some prearranged violent car crash, you have to realize that in most instances such an event causes devastating effects, both for those left in physical state, as well as the soul who has passed on so quickly that they did not have time to say goodbye. Oftentimes these souls have to be met by their guides and told exactly what has happened to them, for it has not dawned on them that they have actually died. Some have even been known to ignore the presence of their guides and push them out of their energy space altogether, and blatantly anchor themselves to their physical attachments. Now, it is with anyone with common sense that it is to be understood that no soul would choose this upon themselves, or upon those they leave behind. I hope this brings into perspective that such violent or unjust passings are not something which souls choose by free will, but something which takes place through the free will of others, or actions of others, or themselves, and or the environmental circumstances of where they currently are. I have similarly often overheard the words "it was their time." In some respects this is appropriate as it aids in the healing process of those affected. However, time holds little value for intelligence within spirit state, and they do not attach focus upon dates and times like human beings do. It is not the case, you see, that when some soul has completed his earthly mission or assignment that he, or she, then suddenly orchestrates a convenient violent accident, which actually results in the suffering of other beings. You must think logically on this. It is similarly also a false foregone conclusion that every human soul incarnates to fulfill some great spiritual mission, at which point upon its completion they are then to immediately return back to the spirit world to plan for another. As I have stated, physical state experiences are not all mapped out in advance. Some souls simply choose to have a physical state experience because they have met other spirits in the other realms who have, and so they then themselves have been drawn to exploring a creative endeavor in this way. Understanding and coming to terms with why your beloved friends and family pass in such circumstances, and with such unjust timing, is a matter of accepting the fallibilities of human action, an action or interweaving influences which affect you in physical state. Cause and effect. It is about finding peace within yourself upon the foundation of respect for the laws that govern your universe. If your passing involves some degree of trauma, such as perhaps a gunshot wound to the chest, if your conscious mind is aware that you are dying, then confidently you are likely to figure out you have just died when you find yourself floating above your body. If on the other hand, you are already unconscious, perhaps within your dream state, or perhaps within a coma after suffering a physically traumatic experience, your passing is likely going to take place in a more subtle fashion. If your conscious awareness is not focused on your physicality and your physical environment at the time of your passing, it is much more likely you will not realize you have left your physical body and have now passed. Under such circumstances you may likely presume yourself to be within a dream or other state of disorientation where you suddenly begin to see manifestations of things you are thinking about, typically to do with your human memory. Again, there is a significant link between your human memory, cellular memory, and the consciousness journey after your passing. The degree of trauma carried over by the individual soul after suicide really differs significantly between people of different backgrounds, spirituality and value structure. This is to say, if you are for the most part in sound mind and good spiritual self-awareness, you are going to handle the event much more fluidly than someone who is emotionally distraught and lost within themselves. This emotional or mental instability will seek an outlet after crossing to the spirit world, for your thoughts are real living creative substances which create solidified reality. Even after undergoing spiritual aid to overcome these inner turmoils, the soul still has to address their feelings in regard to regret. Now they may not regret ending their own life, and may feel pretty relieved after their passing, but during their life review may come to discover they have caused a whole chain of negative effects on the physical world which they will not be able to simply ignore. They will then feel an urgent impulse to resolve these impacts on others' lives by hanging around the earth plane attempting to coordinate their efforts in fixing the pain of others. They have then not been able to have a swift release into paradise, for the energy of their actions has caused guilt to drive their vibrational state. Guilt is a very heavy, dense vibration to hold on to, and this is the energy which causes many of the problems for passing souls. Their loving embrace in the planes of love and light, being totally engulfed in it, has given them the clear, transparent wisdom to understand their inadvertent effects on others' lives. Instead of dealing with their own physical life issues, they now inherit those of others whom they had been responsible for. Regardless of this painted picture, know that all who cross over, regardless if they take their own life, will be greeted and granted the greatest love and compassion by a great diversity of beings. There is no punishment, but that which you cause yourself to endure by your own judgment. Your thoughts about yourself, your actions, become the knife with which you cut into your own heart and bleed your own soul to bear for persecution. Punishment in the afterlife is a man-made concept. As such may exist as a manifested concept by one projecting their own punishment upon themselves. The only punishment which exists in the afterlife is self-imposed by disillusionment. I can understand why you would not immediately grasp the intricacies involved with this type of soul passage, and thusly pose these questions in an attempt to analyze opposing points of view. It could be said, to fully comprehend my initial point of view and stance, one would greatly benefit from being in the proximity and presence of those who have actually passed over in this way. Those too who have themselves attempted to end their own lives, but perhaps returned or had failed in their attempt, would have a better personal experience in understanding where I am coming from. Many of those who choose to cut their lives short through self-harm do so within a place of fear. This fear can often be overcome with the right guidance and support before any suicide takes place. I shall always be an absolute advocate of guidance and support as a means of prevention even in the darkest of times. There are those who see the body as merely a barrier. They would say that they go not in fear, but through an attraction of gravitating towards something else, which the body is not, and cannot provide for them. Yet this is not understanding what the body is capable of. It is not understanding what the mind is capable of, and similarly also what the spirit is capable of. In this outlook they have neglected their own wisdom in understanding the essence of the spirit already exists within them, and that they need not go anywhere else to find it. It is said, it is human nature to fear what they do not understand. It is through not understanding that those who commit suicide think and act in the way they do. For if they truly understood what was possible from where they are presently, they would not have arrived within the thought of self-harm to begin with. I have complete compassion and unreserved love for those who do take their own life for whatever reason. It is not my intent to impose notions of right and wrong, for all beings are captains of their own morality and their perception of value. Many of those who are unfortunate to have not received the right guidance and support and who take their own lives often get fixated with their state of unfinished affairs. This is to say, they feel, once having passed over, that they have not accomplished or gained from their physical life what they had hoped and expected. They feel matters often left unsettled and unresolved, where a sense of something else or something more could have been achieved or gained, or that they could have approached the problem differently. They also have to witness those they have left behind who dwell in sorrow and who often blame themselves for not doing enough to prevent the loss of life. This lowers their own sense of self-value and achievement in their own lives. Furthermore, because of their personal connection to those of the physical plane, they then feel obliged to support those still alive through some feeling of responsibility. This often causes frustration and sadness for them because they then wish they were right there physically with such people to comfort them, instead of being invisible and unable to be seen, heard or felt. These situations occur all of the time and are observed by many spirit guides who try their very best to comfort those who end their own lives, and also those who are left to burden the blame. On this matter, I continue to infer my advice, for these are events which have occurred, and do occur, and which have and are being observed. Each and every individual soul goes to the same place. There is not one place for one person and another for another. What experience you have of yourself in that place will depend on the nature through which you arrive there, and what you take with you. For it is, what you take with you is what you will first and foremost be observant to, and what you take with you is what begins to reveal itself to and upon you 100-fold. If there are closed doors within your mind and heart, and if there are intolerances towards aspects of life and the very value of it, then these will also be carried with you into the afterlife. For suicides, it is not a question of what they do or not do deserve. Nor is it a question of forgiveness. All beings are of the Prime Creator and receive the same unconditional love and guidance regardless of who or what they are, or what they have done in physical state. Their spirit remains pure and pervading at all times. The question is, how much of that unconditional love and guidance are they open and choosing to receive at any given time within their journey? I can only relate experiences I have been aware of concerning those who have passed on and later regretted their decision, feeling that they could have done more within their physical journey. I can only relate to those who, once addressing the Akashic book, felt they had left their affairs in a state of incompletion. I can only relate to those who try their very best to comfort those who they left behind upon the earth, who continue, in their own way, to suffer. Watching loved ones continue to suffer in their everyday lives, yet no longer able to hold their hand, whisper words of love and comfort, or make them laugh emphasizes the full consequences of their own actions. In willfully choosing to take yourself away from those you love most in physical life creates a whole new dimension of what suffering can become. For you may have seemingly escaped your own woes of human affairs, but have you really?